This is the Book Deal podcast,
where you will discover the inspiring stories behind your favourite books.
We interview seasoned and debut authors, as well as publishing industry professionals, to bring you the best tips and advice on how to get that elusive book deal.
So no matter what stage of writing you're at, we've got you covered. I'm Tina Strawn.
I'm Madeline Cleary.
And I'm Natasha Rai.
And join us as we pull back the curtain of published authors,
one deal at a time. The Book Deal podcast acknowledges the traditional owners of the land and waters which it's recorded on, and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging.
Angie Faye Martin is a writer and editor of Kooma, Kamilaroi and European Heritage. With a Bachelor of Public Health from the Queensland University of Technology and a Masters of Anthropology from the Australian National University, Angie has spent many years working in policy roles in state and federal government before launching First Writings in 2019. Her work has been published in Meanjin, Garland, the Saltbush Review, and The Rocks Remain. She is a member of the First Nations Australia Writers Network and accredited with the Institute of Professional Editors. Good morning, Angie Faye Martin. Welcome to the Book Deal podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Natasha. I'm delighted to be here.
It's great to have you. So we're here to talk a little bit about your debut novel, Melaleuca, as well as your publishing journey. So is it okay if we start with you giving us a bit of an elevator pitch for Melaleuca?
Yeah, sure thing. So Melaleuca is about Detective Renee Taylor, who is working down in Brisbane. She's got an amazing career. She's worked hard to get where she is. She's quite determined, quite fierce. She's Aboriginal and she's struggled against certain things in her life to get where she is. And then she gets a call from her mum, and her mum is suffering from debilitating arthritis in her hands, and she's struggling to get by. Her mum lives in the country town where Renee grew up. It was just the two of them. And her mum can't find a carer. And so she asked Renee to come home and help take care of things around the home. Renee, being the dutiful daughter that she is, reluctantly agrees and arranges a secondment with work. So she's kind of demoted, I suppose, from a detective back to being a constable, and she goes back to Garunga, the little country town where she grew up. It opens on day 2, and Renee's kind of bored, a bit frustrated. She's helped her mum all weekend around the house, and she gets to the office early, and then she gets a call from a resident. A resident has been down walking by the creek and has found the body of a woman, and Renee fires into action, goes down, and Renee, nobody knows who this young Aboriginal woman is. Renee's assigned to the investigation and asked around town who knows her. No one has reported her missing, and so it becomes quite a perplexing case. Renee is assigned to it, and then as she digs deeper into what may have happened to this young woman, she discovers a link to the past. And so Melaleuca is based on dual timelines set in the year 2000 and then 1965, where 2 women went missing. And yeah, obviously the cases are linked. So that's right. Melaleuca in a nutshell.
Thank you. So having read it, I absolutely loved it. And I found myself kind of flying through it because it was so gripping. And I don't read a lot of crime fiction, and this just grabbed me. And what really struck me was there are so many different elements, and I'm going to be very careful because I don't want to give anything away because there are a few twists and turns in it. But I was just curious about how they all kind of came together for you in the writing. So I guess the first thing I want to ask about is, this is a story about Aboriginal women, and I know in your author's note you've talked about, violence against Aboriginal women and violence in Indigenous communities sometimes, and how it's portrayed. What was your starting point? Was that your starting point, or did that come into the mix as you started writing?
Yeah, great question. So maybe I'll go back a little bit. So the starting point, very good question. I actually started writing Melaleuca about 10 years ago. A lot was happening for me. And I mean, quite a few readers say there is a lot going on in it. And that's probably where I was at in life. 10 years ago, I was in my early 30s. I was living in Melbourne. And I was working for the public service, and I had followed, my parents' directions and got a sensible job, and I was enjoying it to a certain degree. I'd studied public health, and then I did my master's in anthropology and development studies, and I really wanted to serve the community, and I love the intellectual side of things as well, writing briefs and analysing policy, but I found that it wasn't enough for me. I felt like there was just something bursting inside me. And I remember going for long walks with my husband and probably driving him crazy, just a bit of a chatterbox and thinking through all these things. I was also reading crime at the time. I was reading a few crime thrillers and struggling to process a lot of my thoughts. And I thought, as I was walking around Carnegie down in Melbourne, I was picking off Melaleuca bark, paper bark, and starting to think about personalities and complexity and the layers of things. And I think I just said to my husband, maybe I could put all of this in a crime story. That would be so awesome. Like maybe that could be my canvas, just to explore the complexities around some of those themes that you talked about, being political determination and sovereignty, and violence against Aboriginal women. And there's a bit of addiction in here as well, like helping family members through addiction and mental health struggles. I mean, in my early 30s, I felt like I had a lot weighing on me. And when the idea of, the paper bark and Melaleuca came to me, I thought, yeah, I'm going to do that. And I went home and started jotting down ideas and feeling just an amazing sense of relief come over me. I actually was a smoker back then, and I remember feeling like, for the first time in ages, I don't feel like I need to have a cigarette. Like, this is just giving me such a wonderful sense of relief. And then I got obsessed with the plot, and the plot is a little bit inspired by, I've talked about this previously, this is probably if I had to pinpoint an inspiration, it is the abandonment that my father felt when he reached out to his biological grandfather. And I didn't realize that was something that had stayed with me. I found out when I was about 8 years old, I watched my dad be rejected by his biological grandfather when he reached out to him, in a moment of, bit of loneliness. I think he reached out to his biological grandfather, who was a wealthy white man down in Brisbane, and to see him get rejected made an impression on me at the age of 8. And I wondered, why did that, man not want to know our family? Why did he not want to help Dad out? And I guess as I went through life, this idea of men abandoning their children, or just having children that they don't want to acknowledge, stayed with me. So that kind of was the central kind of element to the plot. And then I went from there, just grabbing all the themes that I was wrestling with in life, identity especially, which shows up a lot in Renee's struggles just as a character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that struck me. And, my other job, in addition to being a writer, is a counsellor. So I work a lot with people experiencing grief. And that was something that came through in Melaleuca as well.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of the imprints that we get through our families. And it just struck me just now when you were talking about your dad, that imprint of, being pushed aside or unacknowledged. And that's something that it feels to me personally as that we hold as a country, this unacknowledged violence that was perpetrated on,
Yeah,
Indigenous and Aboriginal
definitely.
peoples. Like there is that kind of
Yeah.
echo in these women's lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we're starting to refer to it more as intergenerational trauma. But I think some people in the Aboriginal community don't relate so much to those words. I think it is a profound sense of grief and also just a bit of a overwhelming confusion. It's like, why are these feelings coming up for me? But it's interesting that you mentioned grief as well, because I don't think I've talked about this before, but I did start writing Melaleuca around the time that my grandmother passed away, and that it was quite sudden. She lived a very rich and fulfilling life, but she did pass away suddenly from a heart attack. And um, the character of Josh is actually based a little bit on that. And Josh loses his mum. This isn't a spoiler, that happens quite early um, in the story. And I was also wrestling with. Um, you'll see in Josh's character, he feels like he's not processing the grief of his mother. And at the time, I felt like I couldn't fully process the grief of losing my grandmother because I was wrestling with all of these other things going on, and I felt even a little bit of guilt about that. In the early drafts, Josh was a much bigger character. But slowly, as I delved more into Renee became more central. But I had many more chapters on Josh in the first few drafts.
Yeah,
And grief was definitely a thing.
and also there's this echo of grief. And I'm going to choose my words carefully so I don't give anything away. But in the past, in the 1965 timeline, what really spoke to me and touched me was the deep sense of love in those families. Like even when we're describing one of the girls as a bit wild, it just spoke to me of youthful exuberance and wanting to have fun and wanting to experience this life that's feels small, and the way we judge that, especially putting on this lens of Indigenous kind of population, or I don't know, there's something around you have to be a certain way, but there was just so much love in these families and so much acceptance that just really spoke to me.
That was really important for me when I was drafting Melaleuca. Often we're hit with just overwhelming poverty porn, and when you read some accounts of Aboriginal history, it is violent, it is awful, and there is a place for that. But when I grew up, there was always an effort amongst my Aboriginal family to have fun, joke around. Some of our humour can be pretty dark, but I guess that's just the way we deal with things, coming together and yarning. And growing up, you are aware that people see Aboriginal people as being full of despair, and at times we definitely are because of what we've experienced. But we do also have, fun times, a lot of good times. And so the 1960s timeline, which is really where you see the community coming together, that's based on my dad's experience of growing up on the Yamba, which is was a fringe camp back then. And when I hear stories based on Dad's childhood experience growing up on the fringe camp, they are full of poverty and hunger, but heaps of games, childhood games, playing by the creek and yabbying. And I wanted to shine a light just on the humanity that existed in those communities, how much they loved each other and cared for each other fiercely, and that's how we've remained a resilient people. That's how we're still here today. We just fiercely care for each other.
And that came through so strongly for me. But it's such an interest, like all these beautiful layers that you've written into your novel, and crime is the vehicle that you've used to kind of highlight all of that. Was it more than kind of, you said earlier that you were reading a lot of crime at the time. How did that vehicle come about? Like, is it because you are honestly, a natural crime reader, or?
Look, I was reading a lot of crime at the time, but I don't think I read everything, right? It was just, that was what I was reading. I was reading Gillian Flynn, and I liked the suspenseful kind of page-turning genre. And I wanted to write a story that I enjoyed reading, but I don't think I set out too deliberately to write crime. I feel like it became a crime novel because of, I had a detective, I had a crime, and it became a vehicle for me to explore these issues. And over time, I did play into that genre because I realised it worked better. It was what readers expected, and I used those conventional kind of what do you call it, cliffhangers and hooks that I was reading about in my craft books.
Mm.
But I do feel like Melaleuca is not strictly in the crime genre. I think it could be general fiction or historical fiction. And all books are, like all books kind of overlap into other genres.
That's true. And at the same time, you've managed something quite extraordinary with yours in that there are all these fleshed out characters. And I really like the pacing of the story in the 2000s. Like, it's only set over a few days once the investigation gets going. And it felt both fast and also really this lovely unfolding of the links or potential connection between the past. And I was full of admiration of how you navigated that and how you wrote that so beautifully.
I think I have to thank my mentor a little bit. I often found those slow bits actually really easy and enjoyable to write. So a lot of the slow bits, I think, are to do with Renee and her mum, just domestic scenes where they're just talking, nonsense in the house, or Renee collecting eggs out the back. And my mentor said, no, this is really good. Like, I'm enjoying these things. I'm like, I feel like I'm just playing around. Like, I don't feel like this is serious writing. But she encouraged me to keep pursuing it. And so I did. And then over time, when I read it back to myself, I realized that there was a nice flow happening between the intensity of the investigation and also some of the heavier themes where quite confronting things happen. And then I return to this domestic, not tranquility, but like playfulness. And I thought for the reader, it was a nice ebb and flow.
Definitely.
And it was also just fun. I just liked writing, Renee and how she gets along with her colleagues at the station. And I think it's also how country folk just banter a little bit, that's how you get by in life. You just talk a bit of nonsense, talk a bit of crap and, pass the time. And I wanted to bring that out in the story as well.
So you mentioned a mentor. So let's go into your publishing journey. So 10 years ago, you had this idea and you started writing something. Was that your first foray into creative writing?
It was for a long time. Like, I used to muck around when I was a kid and stuff. And then I kept reading, always reading a lot, but I was just doing academic writing. And then so this burst of an idea came through. It was called the Paper Bark Trees at first, 10 years ago. And then I kept going with it just on the side. I was quite obsessed with it, but I didn't have much time because I was working full time. And so I just read craft books, play around with a few paragraphs, share it with a few close friends, my husband, and they they told me later they were relieved that they could tell me it was okay and it wasn't complete crap, because they would have told me if it was crap too. They're good friends, I trust them. And so they said, yeah, go on, keep going with this, And I did. And then I looked at a few competitions because I thought I can't really do this just by myself. It would be cool if I could win one of these competitions where you get a mentor for a little bit. So I looked into those. I did get rejected from a few, but they were great competitions in that they still gave me a recommendation for how I could improve it.
Okay,
like
so
just a short letter.
And I know it was a while ago now, but do you remember what they were and if you had to submit the full manuscript, or was it excerpts?
So I think it was just excerpts. I think I submitted two, yeah, but I don't want to say which ones they were. They were Australian.
Okay. But were they specifically kind of crime related or just general adult?
Just general adult fiction. Okay. But I remember I got like a 2-page summary report with a little bit of a prompt where I could take it. And so it was still helpful. It was excellent. It was like disappointing. I was heartbroken at the time, but then I was like, I'll just keep going with it. And then I got my long service leave, 3 months, and was excited because I could devote a lot more time to it. And then I found the HarperCollins First Nations Commercial Fiction Fellowship, which required a 70,000 word draft. So I set my goals on that was like, I'm going to, get this story into shape, get it to 70,000 words. That was back in 2019. And I was successful in that competition. And as part of the award, I was assigned a mentor for 12 months. And just as I was assigned that, I went over to Adelaide and met my mentor, Amy Matthews, over there at Adelaide Writers Week. And then the COVID lockdown started. So lucky I got in that quick trip over there. I could meet her in person, and then came home and was able to work under her kind of tutelage for 12 months. I was also closely connected to the publisher at HarperCollins, Joe Mackay, who I've continued to work with now. And so that process was incredible.
And can I just ask something about that? So with your mentorship, were you working on different elements like structure, characterization, like those kind of broad strokes to get it into a tighter form?
Everything, yeah. So she would do like a full read through and then provide me with like a bit of a manuscript assessment of how I could improve it overall. She also did pointed out what I was doing well, which I found, encouraging. So she was always like, yeah, your dialogue is great. Oh, thanks. Never even really studied that. That was just something that came naturally. Point of view I struggled with. And so I had to do a few extra courses on point of view. I was head hopping, so getting in too many characters' heads at once and confusing the story. So that was a weakness for me. Pacing was something that I was okay at, but I really needed to improve given the crime genre. So I read lots of suspense craft books and hooks and cliffhangers and, enter the scene late and leave early, that kind of thing. But Amy really met me where I was at in my journey because I already had pretty decent vocab and everything. I'd, had a master's in academic writing, but there were some real basics like point of view that I just didn't get at all. So it was, tailored to what I needed. So Amy read a few drafts, gave me feedback on how I could improve it. And then after that year, I was brought over to Joe Mackay at HarperCollins and given more in-depth kind of manuscript assessments from there. Finally got the contract in. Yeah.
Sorry, go on. I was just going to say this would have been, 2021, right?
2021, yep. Kept working at it. Got the contract, and that was 2023, I think. What are we up to now? 2025. Yeah, 2023. And then it was all done for a long time, to be honest. And then it's a matter of choosing the right publishing window. So the publishers put a lot of thought into when to release the book.
Yes, I understand that because I had the same. I signed my contract in 2023 and mine came out 2025. So I know that sense of time. But when you won the prize, was the publication like an option or was it a guaranteed thing? Like you do a year's mentorship and then...
No, it wasn't. And I was naive, like probably now in hindsight, I probably would look around for an award that guaranteed publication. No, I basically just hustled. I kept hustling. I didn't even really understand the publishing world. I just thought, oh yeah, they seem like really professional people, like experts in their field. I wanted to work with the best. So I looked up both their profiles and I was like, yeah, these people know what they're doing. I didn't really look into the ins and outs of whether the award involved a contract. I don't regret it, but it did become a little bit of a hustle towards the end. It was like, when do I get a contract? When can I put the book out? That became a little bit hard at the end.
So sounds like you had a lot of confidence in Melaleuca by that point to kind of, you said hustle, but to have that confidence to keep going, because I know what I was like back then. I was terrified of everyone. I don't know why, but and a lot of emerging writers, they get really nervous about pushing themselves forward or asking for things.
I guess it was probably my pathway into it because I had, won this 2019 fellowship and then it was like, okay, so what now? Like I put in 7 years or so at that point of time into this manuscript. Yeah.
Does that fellowship still exist?
No, I think they only ran it once.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Well, you were right time, right place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, listeners. I'm Kasey Whitelaw. I'm the author of Flute and my new picture book, The Great Shark Egg Case Hunt. I'm a debut author and a marine biologist. I'm so thrilled to tell you about my new book, The Great Shark Egg Case Hunt, which is inspired by a real-life citizen science project. It's illustrated by Sylvia Morris and published by CSIRO Publishing. Did you know some sharks and their close relatives lay eggs? Inside the case, a baby shark grows until it's ready to wriggle its way out, leaving the empty egg case behind. Empty egg cases can wash up on beaches all year round, so join our young citizen scientists as they search for shark egg cases. You'll journey around the world, stopping off in places like England, Australia, South Africa, and icy Alaska. But remember, look closely, some shark eggs are easily camouflaged. The Great Shark Egg Case Hunt brings science into children's everyday experiences, turning a fun day at the beach into a citizen science adventure. It's a story, a field guide, and a fun extension activity all in one. So come along, you can be an egg case hunter too. The Great Shark Egg Case Hunt is available now.
So how much, what's the word? How much input did you have into the cover? Because the cover is stunning.
So none. Well, they asked me for a few ideas. I sent through a few photos, and I thought it would be like a outback landscape, like silos or something. But when I saw it, I was absolutely blown away. I loved it. I'm sure I could have, asked for changes if they had given it to me and I don't like it. But I told them from the beginning, I trust that you're the experts in cover design. And yeah, so when I saw the beautiful blues and greens was what I secretly wanted, but I didn't pass on that like requirement or anything because I thought it would be beautiful if it came back in blues and greens, and then it did. And I thought, oh, this is serendipitous. It's meant to be. But yeah, Darren Holt, who did all of Trent Dalton's books, designed this one for me, and it's actually the Crow's Nest waterfalls, which is just outside of Toowoomba, and that's what Crystal Ponds is based on in Melaleuca. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you signed the contract. How was that? That must have been, I don't know, a culmination of everything you've been working on, right?
It was a blur. I remember being in Spain actually, and because my husband's Spanish, and life is crazy. I think my mum came over for a visit, and I got this contract, and I remember thinking, "Whoa, this just got serious. This is awesome. This is great. This is what I wanted." But then also thinking there are so many words in this document that I do not understand. So I got a lawyer to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Paid for my own lawyer. I looked up an expert in what do they call it, in the arts, like film and television entertainment law. And yeah, he looked over it for me. I did a heap of research into all of the different royalties and everything, and signed it off and sent it away. And I think, yeah, it was a nice experience, but I still felt like there was quite a bit of work ahead of me. I felt like it was just the beginning, and it was true. Something in me was like, this is just the beginning of a very long journey, because next comes the promotions and the publicity. So signing the contract was actually quite nerve-wracking. Signing the contract, I know people like celebrate with champagne and everything. For me, it was like, this is serious. I felt like this is a new journey beginning. Yeah,
for
which
sure.
was exciting but scary.
Yeah, I get that. And also, you mentioned about promotions. So your book, you signed in 2023, and Melaleuca came out in June, the beginning of June. So how has it been? How was it in the lead up? What was your experience like?
I mean, I was pretty nervous leading up to the release of Melaleuca, not so much about the quality of the book, because I feel like I put enough work into it and I read enough to know, like, I don't want to sound like a big know-it-all, but I kind of felt like it was a good book. It was more the public speaking and the publicity, and I don't really like that, natural. I'm starting to enjoy it now that I've done enough, but I was so scared and so daunted by everything. I tried to make it as enjoyable as possible by doing the things that I like. So I bought new lipstick and new heels and new clothes and just tried to make it fun because I was like, this is going to be a big part of my life now. So I tried to embrace it as much as possible. But yeah, I actually work with a performance coach, and she helps me with, you know, that external facing things. So little techniques to, you know, I don't know if you noticed, but whenever I do an event, I wear my headband because that's kind of like my external persona. And then when I come back into creative writing, I feel like I shift gears. And I've talked to quite a few writers who are similar to that. You kind of have to put a lot of energy, and even though it's fun getting out and talking about your book, for us writers, most writers, I think we enjoy our little caves and coming back and exploring and having that time to go into our own little worlds. And that's where I'm at now, is trying to balance the two. So figure out the right portion of my weekly schedule that I can dedicate to the external stuff, the publicity and the promotion, and how much time I need to unwind, and then how much time I can actually write. I'm not one of those writers who can, well, for now, I might change, but just write on the go, like in the car when they're dropping the kids off at school, or I need like my office and focus. I don't even write very well in a cafe or anything. So I'm a bit boring like that.
I can probably write in public places, but I can't do those quick things that people can do. I'm the same. I need some blocks of time.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your performance coach gave you some good tips around transitions, right? So you have this public facing thing, and then you can come out of that and go into your creative.
Yeah, she's been amazing. Big shout out to Helen. I'm not going to give you her last name because then you'll inundate her, and she's mine.
So, I mean, you don't have to also give away anything she did for you for free, but I'm just curious if there was one or two things that you found the most helpful in terms of how you can help yourself when you're doing your promotions or events.
It's probably a little bit underrated or obvious, but breathing techniques is one of them. Like just slow breathing beforehand. Also, I do just basic CBT stuff. So I've got these little sheets where I will write down all of my negative thinking, and then in one column, and then all of my positive thoughts in the other. So a few days before I do something that I'm scared about, I will just write, you know, like, why am I scared? You know, because I'm going to, I don't know, say something stupid, for example, like just anything that comes into my mind, like, or I don't know, I'm going to be late. I'm going to completely stuff it up. I'm going to forget to turn on my microphone, which I actually did in Sydney, and it's not that bad. So you write down all of the things that are contributing to the anxiety. And this is classic CBT, right? And then in the positive column, like you do the counter belief to that thought. So I'll forget to turn on my microphone. And then the positive thing is, okay, big deal, record it again later, which is what's going to happen with one of the things I was on.
Oh, that's a really good technique. I like that. And I use it.
It's so simple, too. And it's and it's whatever works for you as well.
Yeah, so. Exactly. So what does your writing practice look like now, 3 months since the book's been out? Do you have time, or are you still really absorbed in Melaleuca?
I'm slowly getting back into it. So I try to write in the morning. I feel like I'm at my best in the morning after I've just had my coffee. I have my own freelance editing business as well. So I do that in the afternoon. In the morning, I feel a bit more creative. My mind's a bit more explorative. So I get up, I write. If I get stuck, I just do a little walk around the block, or, you know, just a 10-minute walk even, just literal walk around the block. And I'm probably averaging 2 or 3 hours a day writing.
That's great.
And then in the afternoon, maybe 3 or 4 hours on my business. I would like to increase that a little bit over time, but yeah, Melaleuca, the events for that are still almost on a weekly basis, and that obviously requires a bit of preparation as well.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
so when you write, are you kind of sitting down for whatever it is and writing whatever is coming to mind, or are you working on something specific, or do you have a goal for yourself?
I'm a real planner. I'm painfully boring planner. So I've finished the draft of my next novel and I'm going through that now.
Congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a sequel. So I've stayed in the character of Renee Taylor, an entirely new crime. Um, yeah, so I planned all that out. I'm at the stage now of, well, I've got a rough draft. I still need to go back, and it's also a dual timeline, and I feel like the present day timeline has got a lot more substance to it than the 1920s timeline. So I'm trying to breathe life into that. When I say breathe life into it, it's like I've got the skeleton, right, of the story. But sometimes plotting is kind of, I feel like the plotting for this one was actually the easy part. Now I need to go in and really fill out the scenes. And you want to be in a hurry. You want to like do it quickly, but you can tell when someone's doing it quickly. So you just have to sit and I imagine the scene, I imagine the smells and you really take yourself back there. When I was writing Melaleuca, actually, what I would do is I would imagine the scene the night before I would go to sleep. And that would save me a lot of time because then when I'd sit down at my desk the next day, I had already been in the scene the night before.
Yeah.
And just like the colours and what are people wearing and what are they saying. And because that part of the writing is it's not necessarily hard. It just takes time and discipline. So letting your mind be in that scene and imagining everything that's going on, what just happened 5 seconds before, what's going to happen later in the day,
Oh, for
you
sure.
can't rush those things. You can't rush those things.
No, you
and
can't. Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. So what's different for you in terms of coming into the second manuscript from writing Melaleuca?
It's been lovely in that it hasn't taken me as long because I know some of the basics now. I feel like it was much quicker to write. I'm really looking forward to starting another one actually. Like now that I feel like I have got some of the craft principles, I've honed them, I know kind of how it works. I may try pantsing, like because I'm such a plotter and planner.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind just doing a few short stories, just pantsing it. Not necessarily for novel, that seems daunting. Like I'll probably waste 30 years of my life if I try to pants the novel, but I like the idea of just playing around with short stories next.
I also imagine
that
pantsing something that needs kind of, you have to plot out or think about your twists and turns and your red herrings and all of those things that go into a crime or a thriller or that kind of, edge of your seat stuff that I feel like because I'm a pantser a little bit, but if I tried to write like that type of story or that type of plot, I would just get lost immediately because half the time I'm writing stuff, I'm not really sure where it's going. Like I have an end point, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. I just let it go. So
I envy people like that. And I also think the writing can be a little bit more beautiful. Like,
I don't know.
Maybe I'll get that. Maybe I'll get there eventually. But for now, I feel like it's a bit more of a practice for me, like to map it all out. I kind of get a bit of satisfaction out of it's like a puzzle that I'm putting together.
Well, exactly. And see, I envy that bit because when I hear writers talk about this puzzle putting together, I'm like, I want a puzzle to put together. Mine's just all like
no.
just, I don't know, flowing here.
Enjoy your chaos. Enjoy your beautiful chaos.
So what's your plan in terms of what you'd like to do with this manuscript? Like, do you have an agent now? Are you interested in one, or how does that work for you?
I don't have an agent. I'm thinking about it. So I was contacted by HarperCollins for the 2 books. So they've
brilliant. Okay, congratulations.
I've got the 2 books covered.
Yep.
Maybe an agent for the 3rd book, given that the ins and outs of all the publicity, the contractual stuff is not really my strong point. I talked to a few people about pros and cons of having an agent, and obviously con is got to share your profit, but the pros seem quite appealing, as in they help you navigate this terrain of publicity and promotion, and it might be worthwhile, doing that, I think, in the end, just so I can optimize my time a little bit more.
Yeah, and the advice that they have, the industry knowledge, like they get to see so many things that we don't have any insight into, like all the other deals and stuff.
Yeah. And I'm not
Yeah.
interested in that, to be honest, to navigate it myself. Like I basically do my writing and then show up and, talk when I have to. But the rest of, and I do Instagram, obviously, but I feel pretty clumsy in all the rest of it. So I'm like, maybe I do need an agent in the long run.
So in terms of this book, then, if you've got like a HarperCollins is interested in your second novel, does that mean you're on a deadline?
Yeah, I got until October.
Oh, wow, that's close.
Yeah, no, but I've been working on it for a while. So yeah, about a year before Melaleuca even came out, I was working on the second one.
Yeah. And does that also mean, and if you can't say, that's fine, but does that also mean there's a release date in mind for the second?
No.
Okay.
So yeah, could be next year, but I doubt it. It's probably going to be 2027, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not too fussed, to be honest. Just once I hand it over, I just like to make sure it's in as good a quality as possible. I'm a bit overwhelmed or daunted. Sometimes people tell me that they read Melaleuca in 2 days or in a single sitting. I'm like, go back and read it again. I'm not doing it. The next one isn't coming out for another year. People ask me when I do go around to do these speaking events, like, how's the second one going? We want to know more about Renee. I'm like, Christ.
Yeah, and that also shows the love, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to. I don't want to rush it though. I mean, good things take time. And
exactly.
I'm a slow writer. I'm pretty slow.
So in terms of we always like to, if possible, invite our guests to give a little tip or tips or top tip to our emerging writers who might be listening. Do you have one in terms of what you've, I don't know, anything that you've gathered along the way?
I mean, patience, probably. A lot of patience. I think also maybe be a bit targeted. So there seems to be actually quite a lot of opportunities out there, but do your research, see who the people are behind various prizes and mentors. I do recommend that route as well. A lot of the big publishing houses now have these kind of programs or opportunities where you can go in, you win a prize, but research who are the people behind it, which mentor would you get, and doesn't have to be matching genre, but a similar style. Like, do you think you could work with them, and open up about your vulnerabilities as well? Like, do you think you could share what what you think your weaknesses are in writing, because that's how you're going to improve. So research, don't give up, be patient, enjoy it. Don't lose the joy for it. Like, I'm lucky that my husband constantly reminds me of, enjoying the craft, because sometimes I get frustrated and it's not good enough, and, it becomes a job, and it literally is kind of my job now, but it's not going to be good writing if you're not enjoying it. People can tell. Like, if you're slaving away at your computer all day and you're hating it, your writing's probably going to come out like that as well. So, and that's not easy, but I think that's looking after your own well-being, like as in doing what you love and having a balanced life. You're looking after your health and walks and water and, catching up with friends. Like, you can't write if you're not in a good place yourself, I think.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And I have a final question, even though you've already given me so many good tips. What have you learned about how to write such layered stories?
That it takes time and a meditative type of practice. It's not easy. I think I enjoyed the puzzle. I became a bit obsessed with it. I remember walking around the block and it was like an obsession to try and make it all fit together. All these plot strings, and you pull out one loose thread and then the whole thing falls and you've got to put it back together again. But part of me enjoyed it as well. So don't beat yourself up, even though there definitely were times when I beat myself up. Try not to. But yeah, the layers of the characters, that just takes time and love of the work. The layers in terms of the dual timelines, that just takes a lot of concentration and time. Yeah.
And, you know, being so immersed as you were, do you remember if you took breaks when it all got too much, or if you needed to, just to take a bit of distance and look at it from a different perspective?
That's so important. Like, absolutely. I would take small, like, micro breaks during the day, as in just a walk around the block. And then I'd also have goals where I would finish the draft or the chapter or whatever, the timeline that I was working on by Friday. And then I would promise myself I'm not going to look at it for the next week. Like, I'm going to make myself have a whole week off and just read or work on something else, just to give your mind a bit of a break. But I also needed my friends and family and my husband to tell me that as well. Like, Angie, give it a break. You know, you're getting a bit of, because you can't, sometimes you just, there's an art to it, right? There's an art to it. As much of it is a craft, writing, there's also an art that you need sometimes the ideas to come to you. So I've actually been stuck in something on Sandalwood, the sequel. And when I was in Sydney, I remember just lying back on my bed at the hotel and just kind of going into a bit of a meditation, I suppose. Just there's one part that I haven't been able to pull together, and it just came to me, and I was like, that's the beauty of writing. Like, yeah, this element kind of came to me.
Oh, I love that. Well, sadly we're out of time. I could easily talk to you for a couple of hours. I know. Thank you so much for being my guest on The Book Deal, Angie. And yeah, I love Melaleuca, and I hope that it finds all the readers it deserves, because it's a really special book, and I loved it.
Thank you for having me on your show. I have really enjoyed this chat.
My pleasure. I had a wonderful chat with Angie, and reflecting on our conversation, what got me thinking was around the stories we tell and how we tell them. So the intention that I'm setting for the following few weeks or the next month is as follows. So if you have a look at your manuscript, regardless of what genre you're writing in, have a look at the risks that you take with your storytelling. Are there layers that you're adding to your characters or to your plot? Like, are there multiple motifs or themes that you're trying to explore in your writing? And if you're not, and you want to tell a story that's pretty straightforward, have a look at what you're risking. Publishers these days are very interested in looking at people playing with form and the type of risks we might take when we're writing in a genre that has a lot of publications in it, for example, crime. So that is an invitation and the intention for you to go and have a look and see where you can maybe take a few risks. And of course, one of the most beautiful things that Angie and I talked about was the time to really immerse yourself and imagine. So if you can take some time to daydream your way into thinking about risk-taking, storytelling, and layering, that is my invitation to you, and that is the intention. Thank you to Di Taylor and Lindsay Bartels, our newest Patreon subscribers. Welcome to the Book Deal podcast community, and thank you so much for your support.
Thank you for listening to the Book Deal podcast. We're able to bring you these weekly writerly chats because of our amazing patrons. Join the TBD family by becoming a member of our Patreon community at patreon.com/The Book Deal podcast. And if you love the pod, please give us a rating or review, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook.